Hello, it's so nice to be here. Yes. One way, one heart, one way. I'm really grateful for being here because I don't have many opportunities to do poetry lately. I've been acting. So for me to be here, to see another black woman archiving, to see another black woman making the words that I cannot make for the feelings I have, the yearning, the loss, is phenomenal. It's really phenomenal. And to be able to reference that whenever you speak, you'd be like, okay, that thing that Koleka said, you know, about wanting to be alive more than she wants love, that's the thing that I want too. So as I open, because I'm the cold drink and she's the main meal, let me do it. For the hands, the color of borrowed, poached, sold, displaced. You, backyard hands in your blue uniform. You, lined up like loaves of bread inside the unfastened mouth of a white van. Packed so close, the wind bites your eyes. But you never drool over into the moving road. You brown psalms lifting off a wash line, wiping yourself off an apron, scratching under a dook at a sink, chopping, cooking, washing, ironing, mopping, dressing, folding. You witch. You raising your clay children with the back of your hands, loving, but with the back of your hands, bending, twisting, readying them with as much water as you can, with as much as you have without a man. You, girl. There's a girl who does not speak without swallowing her mouth first. Her teeth are cropped tombstones. All the bodies in her mouth have her tongue. Her tongue says, you are wounding the blood in my heart. And what comes out is a winded sigh that chants like a small leaf bitten off by the wind. I am okay. I have not died. I'm okay. And so it is that my mother's black is mine. A white only area, a horse staircase, a room in the back. My mother's black is mine. I do not show you the room inside me where everything is so damaged it is hoarse, where I am so ugly the mirror cracks into a throat to say it cracks into an unhappy song. My black is too black, is a wide bone on fire, is an injured hammer, is a famous rope. My mouth is a room in the back. Every day I am waking up inside the throat of a dog. The dog is a white only area. I have to bark to get out. I have to sit to get out. My black is horse. And this country wants us to tell each other to die, to lay in bed with sand in our mouths, to kiss in coffins, eat our neighbors in the street, to call ourselves something ugly and then break our mouths so we can never relieve the suffering, to slump our children inside their dolls, teach them to shh, play dead, split open, and come home like smoke without a voice or a body. It worries that we would make a fire as big as the country tied around our fathers' necks, for the country tied around our fathers' necks. It wishes we would leave, being that it has sunk its homes into the sea away from us, being that it has nursed its dogs on the people in our ankles, being that the joy here is ferrying their children in its mouth, where ours cannot be family. This country is a liar. You think it is dead everywhere except in its mouth when it calls you kafir or boy at a petrol station in front of your children at school. It fiddles in your language, says you speak black. Sound like anger cursing into a glass, like shouting in a purple hair salon where the sun is loud in the hair dryer. This country leaves the room when we speak. says we are gurgling the ocean in its bones, and then spends years carrying our parents away from us, off our tongues, on burning highways by bus in the handle of a broom. In this country, we are tin cans stacked in the middle of the street, low like our money and our God, shortened on purpose from kings to staircases. This country will shoot you in the back and hide your body inside an owl, inside the money, because it has heard you call yourselves kings, because we are calling each other away from withering, because we are humming backwards through a broken throat, because the sorrow did not eat our tongues. And all along, we were the money inside the book, with chapters for kingdoms and sentences like people, each page a question, a servant with a gun, a wing. And doesn't it feel good to take this country off your skin, to read, to leave, to fly away from here again and again and again? The world seems to think that black woman looks more beautiful screaming. You ever hear a rose scream? It sounds like a closed fist eating thorns. I guess it makes looking away hard. But I'm mad that mouths do not die like fists, because in your mouths, black woman is a door. And the door can never say, today, I am tired of being touched or looked at. No one gives the door a name. The door can scream and still be dead, but black woman is not a dead woman. Black woman is not a potion. She is not for your dishes or your body. You ever tried a bottle flesh till it's so vexed it smells like you're sleeping next to an open grave? That's a black woman. Black woman is not arranging her long and hard, her crossword face for you to take photographs of and pin up as Africa, a 6-letter word for poor. Black woman is not starving, honey. She is eating whatever she wants. She is eating the couch and the tables and the walls. She is loud and taking up as much room as she wants, because black woman is not a broom no more, or a closet. And black woman next to a white woman is not a purse, honey. Black woman could eat you without moving her mouth, could keep that secret till she burp you. Black woman got into your mother the same way you become hers. The first time her throat bloomed with crying. The first time she picked up something she want and couldn't have. All the times she walked into a room and it feels like everyone wants to make her the log for their fire. So yes, black woman will fight. And black woman will cuss, will close her fists and let her knuckles spit in your face, because black woman is not a bridge no more. Look at her. She is sitting for a moment to count her feet and laugh. And every time that sound eats her throat, black woman is plotting about how to love herself. Thank you so much.
I think she deserves more than that, guys. Let's celebrate her magic. Thank you so much, Vuyelwa. So the Cheeky Natives have a cool way of rating books and poetry, and we like to give people land for when it comes, then they will have land. So Vuyelwa, we think you deserve like a young suburb there in Sandton. Yeah. As Vuyelwa was reciting her poems, I was reminded of Christelle Valentine, she says to be black woman and alive is to be magic, is to be the witch that wouldn't burn. And I think, thank you. I think it's important to have people tell our stories. You know, sometimes coming into these spaces, my friend describes it as a emotional stock fail. Now we all come and it's hard, but we leave here refreshed because at least the people who stood here in front told our stories so we could relate instead of through some gaze. So thank you for that. And what we've all been waiting for, Koleka Putuma herself, reading from Collective Amnesia. Please give her a round of applause.
The mirror spits your grandmother back at you. Her determined eyes, her machete mouth, her howling courage. You are third generation Messiah. Black joy.
Every time.
We were spanked for each other's sins, spanked in syllables and by the word of God. Before dark meant home time. My grandmother's mattress knew each of my siblings and cousins and neighbors' children's morning breath by name. A single mattress spread on the floor was enough for all of us. Bread slices were buttered with irama and rolled into sausage shapes. We had it with black rooibos. We did not ask for cheese. We were filled. My cousins and I would gather around one large bowl of umngqusho, each with their own spoon. Sugar water completed the meal. We were home and home. But isn't it funny that when they ask about black childhood, all they're interested in is our pain, as if the joy parts were accidental. We write love poems too, but you only want to see our mouths torn open in protest, as if our mouths were a wound with pus and gangrene for joy. Coming home, this one time, in your office, spread reckless across your deadlines. We made love like we were being chased by wolves, like the wolves were on your desk with us, like the wolves were in our hands circling around our clits and dripping down our legs, like the wolves were in our mouths devouring all flesh and bone. I didn't know how wild I could be until you touched me. I didn't know coming could be an act of survival too. Bitches, you awake now, is all I'm saying. Even the other day at the platform, people only wake up for that poem. And it's because you like things. What? Black Joy? Ah! I should rename that poem, Black Joy. Black Queer Joy. Hey now. A footnote. Suicide. Not everyone can afford to breathe for a living. Memoirs of a queer enslaved person. I do not want to die with my legs up or legs open. Interview. Question, why did you leave? Answer, I grew tired of being the coffin in the room, of having other coffins lowered down my throat and being asked if I am breathing okay, of having tombstones lowered down my nostrils and being asked if I am breathing okay, of Paul bearing the news of murdered lesbians and being asked if I am breathing okay, of the expectation that we must exist as obituaries, of being hung at half-mast and being expected to breathe okay, of being written about as if I am already dead. Black men and white women always write about black women as if we are already dead. Seems like the world does not know what a black woman walking really looks like when she is breathing. Question, why are you always murdering our narratives with your gaze? Why are you always hijacking our narratives with your gaze? Why are you always trying to assassinate us with your gaze? Answer, Hawa, where are you? A footnote, another one. There are many of them. Love. Some drugs come dressed as 12-step programs. Hey, yo, you disturbed me. It's okay. Growing up black and woman. I've got so much love for you, man. Growing up black and woman will teach you how to hoard skeletons, how to duct tape your screams with staples so everyone can flip to the next page without hassle. Numbering is kept at the expense of your sanity. If our underwear drawers could speak, they would bleed, I tell you. Pillows would hemorrhage on our behalf. The unfortunate thing about healing is this. It convinces you that the pain is better than a scab. Scabs make people ask questions. This is one more in this kind of context, and then we'll talk and we'll read in between. Graduation. You will leave your parents' nest, cultivate familiar traditions borrowed from your childhood. You will realize that none of it is new or yours. You will work and send money home. You will work and not send money home. Earning money will earn you a seat at the grown-ups table. Contributing financially will allow you to open your mouth at the grown-ups table, but you will still watch your mouth at the grown-ups table. When you return home, you will slip into roles you have outgrown because it's easier than explaining. Your parents will get older. You will want to work harder so they can retire early. When your parents visit, you will prepare their room and hide all of the things they probably know and suspect about you. Your mother will offer to help with the cooking. The way she chops the onions is loaded with questions. You both have not mastered how to chop onions without crying. Chopping onions that way is how you have difficult conversations. You have both learned how to dance on graves without mourning what is dead or lost between you. Eventually, when your mother asks where you left the things she gave you, you will want to say, I am unlearning them. But unlearning is not a real place or destination. So you will choose to say you do not know and apologize out of habit. You will realize that you lost some things between loving and leaving your lovers. You will realize that your lovers gave you their mother stuff too. And that maybe unlearning should be a place, and all the women in your family should gather there more often, until unlearning is a tradition you can pass on to your children, until chopping onions is not an occasion, until you know how to hold each other at funerals and inconvenient occasions. As you get older, you will attend more funerals than weddings or 21sts. You will attend more baby showers than birthday parties. At family gatherings, you and your cousins will do the things your aunties used to do. Your baby cousins who are not babies anymore will sit and drink ciders with you, talking sense finally. Time will have bridged a gap in some places and poured an ocean in others. The elders will ask you to help them understand what you do. What you do is another way of saying job. When answering, they will nod in agreement with confused eyes and pursed lips, then respond with, you know, in my time. The elders will no longer send you out of the room when unresolved family traumas ruin dinners, and you will want to facilitate using a language of grieving that will be foreign to them. You will realize the elders in the room learned the alphabet of hurting and falling apart differently. For you, healing looks like talking and transparency. For them, it is silence and bearing, and both are probably valid. And then you will realize that coming home and going home do not mean the same thing. And I'm talking about this because the space is kind, as I said in the beginning, and I feel a lot of love and comfortability here. So my parents have not read the book. They have not received the book. They have not read nothing from here. They know that there's a book. And when I offered to send them the manuscript a month before I had to submit the final thing, they were like, no, babes, we want the hard copy. And I was like, but do you know that when you receive the hard copy that there will be things in there? And they were like, no, we want the hard copy. I was like, okay, have it your way. And I'm on tour at the moment, and I'm with my mom, who's going to be at every single city, every single venue. And yesterday was the first time that she was with me, and we were in the Val. Okay, that's someone who's from the Val. Girl, did you know that your country is a bit dry? I say that with love. Your republic is a bit dry, but it's beautiful. Your people are beautiful. And some poems were quite difficult to read. And in the beginning, when I had the launches in Cape Town, people were just like, what is your objective? What is your aim with this book? And I was like, I'm trying to unlearn a silence. I'm trying to have conversations about blackness. I'm trying to cross the bridge with the elders. The elder was in the room yesterday and it was difficult. I was faced with myself and I was faced with the book for the first time. I had to step up to the thing that I was saying that I'm trying to do with this book. And it was interesting because I was literally going through some poems going, babes, you need to skip that line. Improvisation is your name. But it's going to be an interesting 17 days with my parents, with my mom, with my family. But this was one of the poems, surprisingly, just because of the way that I was raised. That was, as short as it was difficult to read. In the classroom, the student wants to know why there are more blacks in shebeens and churches than there are in museums or commemoration sites. Inheritance. I do not know you when you are drunk. You are a mess when you are drunk. You become someone different when you are drunk. You become something different when you are drunk. Do you have to fight like that when you are drunk? You have a habit of turning on flammable things when you are drunk. Why do you want to burn yourself down when you are drunk? You are a hazard when you are drunk. You are exhaustion on the edge of a bridge, on the edge of a platform, in the middle of a highway when you are drunk. Your hands are gallows when you are drunk. You cannot remember where home is when you are drunk. You sleep in your vomit in other people's homes when you are drunk. You turn other people's homes into asylums when you are drunk. Everything in your body turns into exile when you are drunk. You are a photocopy of your father when you are drunk. You always talk about how much you hate your father when you are drunk. I have never met your father, but I know him when you are drunk. The shit we need to unlearn, the shit that men need to unlearn. Christmas dinner with skeletons. Your perpetrator has your uncle's eyes and his cheap brandy breath. How many abortions have fallen out of your mouth while counting the men in your life? Madness sits at the dinner table too, saying grace with one eye open. In the emergency room, things you do not tell your family. Your marriage was a miscarriage. He almost killed you, but you stayed for the children, you said. Things you did to try and save it. 1, tied the umbilical cords of your dead fetuses around a man who was not even there to hold your hand in the delivery room. 2, Gave your dead children names in an attempt to resuscitate them. Things the doctors tried to tell you. 1, the anesthesia will wear off. 2, you cannot clean out a complicated wound with weed and negligence. 3, cut the umbilical cord. I don't know about you, but social media has been a lot lately. It's been much. After this tour, I can't wait to just cima all of the things. Hashtag trimmings, hashtag logging off, hashtag I'm gone for a while. Online, there are protocols to reaching out. Do not share a meme of your panic attack on social media. Your 3,456 friends do not know of the epilepsy that came before, the willpower it took to pick up the phone and tell your mother that today it is hard, it is sore, in all of the places you cannot see or wrap a gauze around, in all of the places that have not healed in your bloodline. Do not post a selfie of your self-mutilation. God forbid your status reveals that you are lost or breaking. No one will comment on how raw or close to healing your wound is. Your 3,456 friends do not know how far back your trauma runs. A short one. This is how you know that you are God. All your traumas kneel and call you Savior. Think about it, man. You've been through some shit. Just think about all of the shit that you've been through and the fact that you're alive and how many times you've healed yourself, how many times the thing inside of you has beckoned you to heal, despite what you may or may not have learned from your mother or your people who have raised you. Indulgence. Mother, teach your daughter that a grief that sets itself loose in the middle of a highway is not madness. When Auntie so-and-so runs wild at the cemetery, do not say your auntie is a madhouse. When your daughter asks, what is wrong with your elder sister? Say nothing. Tell her it is normal to long for what is gone, to be so angry and lost you do not know what to do with yourself. Say, one day you will understand. All right. Reincarnation. Aibo. Upi. Okay. The mirror spits your grandmother back at you. Her determined eyes, her machete mouth, her howling courage. You are third generation Messiah. Black joy.
Every time.
Would you like to?
No.
We were spanked for each other's sins, spanked in syllables and by the word of God. Before dark meant home time. My grandmother's mattress knew each of my siblings and cousins and neighbors' children's morning breath by name. A single mattress spread on the floor was enough for all of us. Bread slices were buttered with irama and rolled into sausage shapes. We had it with black rooibos. We did not ask for cheese. We were filled. My cousins and I would gather around one large bowl of umngqusho, each with their own spoon. Sugar water completed the meal. We were home and whole. But isn't it funny that when they ask about black childhood, all they're interested in is our pain, as if the joy parts were accidental. We write love poems too, but you only want to see our mouths torn open in protest, as if our mouths were a wound with pus and gangrene for joy. Coming home, this one time, in your office, spread reckless across your deadlines. We made love like we were being chased by wolves, like the wolves were on your desk with us, like the wolves were in our hands, circling around our clits and dripping down our legs, like the wolves were in our mouths, devouring all flesh and bone. I didn't know how wild I could be until you touched me. I didn't know coming could be an act of survival too. Bitches, you awake now, is all I'm saying. Even the other day at the platform, people only wake up for that poem. And it's because you like things. What? Black Joy? Ah! I should rename that poem, Black Joy. Black Queer Joy. Hey now. Wow. A footnote. Suicide. Not everyone can afford to breathe for a living. Memoirs of a queer enslaved person. I do not want to die with my legs up or legs open. Interview. Question, why did you leave? Answer, I grew tired of being the coffin in the room, of having other coffins lowered down my throat and being asked if I'm breathing okay, of having tombstones lowered down my nostrils and being asked if I'm breathing okay, of Paul bearing the news of murdered lesbians and being asked if I'm breathing okay, of the expectation that we must exist as obituaries, of being hung at half-mast and being expected to breathe okay, of being written about as if I am already dead. Black men and white women always write about black women as if we are already dead. Seems like the world does not know what a black woman walking really looks like when she is breathing. Question, why are you always murdering our narratives with your gaze? Why are you always hijacking our narratives with your gaze? Why are you always trying to assassinate us with your gaze? Answer. Hawa, where are you? A footnote, another one. There are many of them. Love. Some drugs come dressed as 12-step programs. Hey, yo, you disturbed me. It's okay. Growing up black and woman. I've got so much love for you, man. Growing up black and woman will teach you how to hoard skeletons, how to duct tape your screams with staples so everyone can flip to the next page without hassle. Numbering is kept at the expense of your sanity. If our underwear drawers could speak, they would bleed, I tell you. Pillows would hemorrhage on our behalf. The unfortunate thing about healing is this. It convinces you that the pain is better than a scab. Scabs make people ask questions. Now, where are you? Okay. This is one more in this kind of context, and then we'll talk and we'll read in between. Graduation. Okay. You will leave your parents' nest, cultivate familiar traditions borrowed from your childhood. You will realize that none of it is new or yours. You will work and send money home. You will work and not send money home. Earning money will earn you a seat at the grown-ups table. Contributing financially will allow you to open your mouth at the grown-ups table, but you will still watch your mouth at the grown-ups table. When you return home, you will slip into roles you have outgrown because it's easier than explaining. Your parents will get older. You will want to work harder so they can retire early. When your parents visit, you will prepare their room and hide all of the things they probably know and suspect about you. Your mother will offer to help with the cooking. The way she chops the onions is loaded with questions. You both have not mastered how to chop onions without crying. Chopping onions that way is how you have difficult conversations. You have both learned how to dance on graves without mourning what is dead or lost between you. Eventually, when your mother asks where you left the things she gave you, you will want to say, I am unlearning them. But unlearning is not a real place or destination. So you will choose to say you do not know and apologize out of habit. You will realize that you lost some things between loving and leaving your lovers. You'll realize that your lovers gave you their mother's stuff too. And that maybe unlearning should be a place, and all the women in your family should gather there more often, until unlearning is a tradition you can pass on to your children, until chopping onions is not an occasion, until you know how to hold each other at funerals and inconvenient occasions. As you get older, you will attend more funerals than weddings or 21sts. You will attend more baby showers than birthday parties. At family gatherings, you and your cousins will do the things your aunties used to do. Your baby cousins who are not babies anymore will sit and drink ciders with you, talking sense finally. Time will have bridged a gap in some places and poured an ocean in others. The elders will ask you to help them understand what you do. What you do is another way of saying job. When answering, they will nod in agreement with confused eyes and pursed lips, then respond with, you know, in my time. The elders will no longer send you out of the room when unresolved family traumas ruin dinners, and you will want to facilitate using a language of grieving that will be foreign to them. You will realize the elders in the room learned the alphabet of hurting and falling apart differently. For you, healing looks like talking and transparency. For them, it is silence and bearing, and both are probably valid. And then you will realize that coming home and going home do not mean the same thing.
Thank you very much. Before we start our conversation, maybe if your glass is empty, we'll give you like 3 minutes, Nyana, to fill it up, and then we'll start the conversation. So just fill up your glass and then come join in the conversation.
Gather your edges. That's what she means. To gather your edges. That's what she says. Get Get the book, girls. Get the book.
There were a lot of answers coming at me in my brain in that moment. I am loving black women at the moment. And that answer is very late. Just because I love black women in general. But I'm loving black women and black women's resistance. And I'm not loving black women's resistance in the way that the world kind of likes black women's resistance, because people put us in cock positions and then they go, oh my God, you are so strong. Oh my God, you are an imbokodo. You are like, you could carry a baby on your back and sweep the floor. It's amazing. You look so good. Not in that way, but just loving, the way that black women are loving on each other at the moment. And I suppose that comes from us being put in a position where we've got no other choice but to huddle together. When you go to an event and there are a lot of those people there, and then you just see those group of black people in the corner because they've got no other option but to huddle together and be together. And it feels like that's what's happening with black women at the moment. And that's black joy for me. That sense of I've got people who have my back. I'm not alone. Black joy, I just got tired. I got tired of being asked, what are your trials and tribulations? I got tired of being asked questions as if I was not a holistic somebody who did not come from a history and who did not come from a childhood that had happy moments, I say in the poem that it's as if the joy parts were accidental. They kind of just happened by coincidence. No, we were intentional about playing utqabs, that I've got no English, hopscotch, I think it's called. We were intentional about, certain things in our childhood. They were not accidental. We created our joy, right? We imagined ourselves. When we would walk past white people's houses and we were just like, the yellow one is mine. And your friend was like, the red one is mine. This is, and I suppose, there's another side to it, that it was just okay, systematically, we had to do that because we had to keep ourselves alive, and kind of not feel shit about where we were. But that was also joy for us to kind of imagine ourselves out of where we were.
I think for me, one of the lines was particularly interesting. You say here, I write love poems too, but you only want to see my mouth torn open in protest. And I was remembering, the narrative of the angry black woman, because that's what society sees black women, even us as black men, that's how we see black women. Every time a woman wants to talk about or use her agency, what we say is it's another angry black woman. And I want to know, because for me, it's a really painful thing when we speak about black women being angry. Because one, I believe there's a fucking lot to be angry about. So black women should be angry. You are at the hands of patriarchy, you're at the hands of racism, you're at the hands of homophobia, transphobia. You have no reprieve. And I like the imagery that you use in your work, because I think it's quite powerful. For me, even this, as if my mouth was a wound with pus and gangrene. The imagery for me is very powerful. It reminds me of how white people like to see us as malnourished people. We're always sick and they're there to save us. So thank you for particularly this poem, because I think, like you're saying, we were joyful, man. Our childhood was amazing. We didn't lack, even if we didn't ask for cheese. Sometimes we didn't even know what cheese was until you came to the other people and you're oh, this yellow thing. But thank you. And I think just to go back, the title of your book is called Collective Amnesia. And in your poem, Lifeline, you speak about the women who've inspired you. And one of the women you talk about is Angela Davis. And she has a beautiful quote that reminds me of this book. And I want to ask you whether when you came to, the title of the book, you had regard to this quote perhaps. She says, we live in a society of imposed forgetfulness, a society that depends on public amnesia. And I thought that was so powerful for me. When I read that immediately, I thought, actually, this is the collective amnesia that Koleka speaks of. How did collective amnesia come about? Not the book, but the title.
Okay, it was a play before. I did a one-woman show called Collective Amnesia. And, okay, so water, the poem Water is a problem. It's a problem child. It will not let me flourish. It will not let my other children flourish. So when Water came out, I started developing other poems that were kind of family to Water. So there was Water's uncle, which is Black solidarity, the uncle who's never sober at the Black family gathering, and a whole lot of other siblings to the poem. And then I kind of put those poems together and then put them into a one-woman show called Collective Amnesia, to kind of talk about things that we were starting to talk. So the play was kind of made 2 years ago, 3 years ago. When was Roads Must Fall? During that time. So when the Roads Must Fall movement started to happen, and what that started to unearth for a lot of spaces and for a lot of people, and and how that started to agitate the amnesia that as a country we had kind of slipped into. And so I was just like, oh, that's very apt. I'm going to name the show Collective Amnesia. And then the book started to happen. I was like, why not continue on that journey of unearthing, of exhuming, of, unburying, of digging up stuff. Yeah.
So speaking of solidarity, right? On Black Solidarity on page 80 is one of my favorite poems as a Black woman. And in it you say, Black solidarity does not include making my spine a doormat so that you can stand or have a backbone.
Yes, girl.
Preach. And later on you go on to speak about, so you say, you want Black women's bodies on the line, not the front line. You endorse intersectionality, but not at the expense of your praise and visibility. And this is such a personal poem for me because with Fees Must Fall, we had Rose Must Fall, and then subsequently it was Fees Must Fall. And this was just over and over again. It was what it looked like to have Black women's bodies as labor, but not have them at the forefront of the revolution. And over and over again, we've had people be saying, the revolution will be intersectional or it will be BS, right? And I want to know what that means for you, what it means for the revolution to be intersectional for you right now. So in your identity as a Black woman, what would it take for the revolution, for when the land finally comes? What will it look like when it's intersectional? No, we're going to get the land, if Black women are at the forefront of the revolution.
I'm trying not to give you a rehearsed answer, which can sometimes happen with talking about movements and talking about revolutionary things. So perhaps more honest and difficult conversations amongst us Black people, as a start for intersectional what's, So us Black people first coming and not having this thing at the back of our minds of, okay, yeah, sharp land, yeah, sharp white people, okay. But Black people getting into a room and kind of going, okay, how can we put queer people first? How can we put Black women first? And not as a show, because there's a performance element of it where people kind of get into a space or get into a room and kind of go, we're giving Black women the voice, but they're not really, there's a way that people kind of perform giving Black women a voice and giving Black queer people a voice that still shuts them up. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about, a space where there's an actual conversation, not a conversation where we're pretending to have a conversation, but having actual conversations about how it is that we can move forward. Because, you know, there's the reality of us. Let's say we get back the land. Let's say it all happens. And then all of the other people who are giving us problems move to wherever. And then, you know, black women are still qinezelad by black men and all the other stuff, you know. So there's still stuff that we as a community still need to work through. And that's the kind of intersectionality and the conversation that you're looking panic. Is it your mic? Do you want to swap? Okay.
So with regards to conversation, Chloe and I we're always having this sort of debate about what conversation looks like, right? Because often people say they want to have a conversation, they want to have conversations with black women or black people, but sometimes it just looks like you doing the labor for them. So I'll have a conversation with you about what it means for me to be black and woman, right? And you'll then want receipts of my lived experience. So it's not enough for me to say, #men are trash. You now want my lived experience. You want me to give you receipts of every occasion and every moment and every space and time in which I've felt whatever I'm feeling at the time. So how do you navigate having those difficult conversations? And I ask this because at your last show, we had a very interesting experience of black man blacking. And so what happened to set the scene was he came in and he asked Koleka a question about what the book was about, or it was something about that, like what is the book about? He hadn't read the book. So she then went on to say, look, so when you read the book, you'll find out what the themes are. And he was like, no, so you're going to answer the question or not? What is the book about? And for me, that's often what conversation looks like. So I say to you, this is what patriarchy and this is what misogyny means to me as a black woman, and this is what it's doing. And we go on to have a conversation that leaves me feeling violated. So how do we navigate these difficult conversations in ways that don't require women to continuously do intellectual labor, to do emotional labor, of forcing people to unlearn despite all the resources and the work that marginalized people have done? Because black men understand not doing the labor when it comes to explaining racism to white people, right? But when it comes to understanding patriarchy and their privilege, it's a completely different conversation. And if we are to be free and to have an intersectional revolution, then what will that mean in terms of conversation? What do black men need to do? Or what do black women even have to do?
We ain't gotta do shit. I mean, as you were talking, I was just thinking about how a lot of the times when we do labor, it comes from the fact that we have been conditioned into a kind of politeness. And I think it starts with unlearning or undoing that politeness at the expense of our sanity, right? Where we put other people first. And it's something that we can't help. It's something that let me just say and learning from the women in my family, that we put black men's needs first, we put other people's needs first, out of this politeness, out of this teaching of carrying. And so I think that it starts, and it's easier said than done, but it starts with unlearning that thing of going, I will not be polite in this situation. I think it was, I'm paraphrasing, but Lebo Mashile said on Twitter that you can't break us and then hurt us, and then you want to come to us and ask us how it is that we must teach you how to heal us. It doesn't make sense, that thing, you know. So black men need to hold a conference among themselves and go, this is the work that you need to do. You know, you can't be violating us, disposing of us, and then come to us and be like, so how can we make this thing, how can we turn this thing around? It doesn't make sense, you know. I'm a corpse and you're asking a corpse how to make you live. What the anyway, so, you know, it's that kind of thing that black men need to, in the same way that white people need to get together and hold conferences and teach themselves, because the knowledge is there, you know, The work, yeah. We live in a society and in a world where you are capable of doing the work amongst yourselves and doing the work on your own. And yes, of course, there are certain environments and certain situations where you like, this person could benefit from me taking the time to unpack certain things for them. But most of the time, like, we can't. As black women, we need to get into a space where we can talk about dildos, masturbation, and men and women and loving and fashion. And, I think it was Nina Simone who was just like, real girl talk stuff, like shit that matters to us.
I think just to get in there, I think what you're saying is important, right? I think maybe like 2 days ago, 3 days ago, I actually wrote a Facebook status, for black men. And I was like, well, we keep talking about women being vigilant and about women having to do the work when rape isn't a male problem, because we're the ones who are raping women. We're the ones who are violating women. So perhaps we shouldn't be having self-defense classes for women and having teaching classes for men, because we need to teach men how not to rape, how not to violate, how to unlearn this toxic idea of masculinity. Because even though we want to believe that racism is the biggest problem, patriarchy is worse. Because patriarchy is killing black men who are, in effect, putting their boots at the necks of black women in order to assert themselves. Malcolm speaks about this idea of, they've given you so much rage and things to be angry about. Like, when you go home to your house, who are you going to take that rage out of? There's a punching bag. Apparently women are punching bags. So I definitely agree with you that the idea that men have to do the work themselves, like women have been doing intellectual work for a lot of years. And as Alma was saying earlier, we understand as black men racism and the harmful effects. So we are not incapable of understanding systems of oppression. And what we need to do is unlearn these systems of oppression, because we are capable. We can tell you what Ubiko and Ufanon says about racism and about the white man. But we don't understand when you say, but hashtag men are trash, So I think I agree with you. I agree with you about that there is a lot of conversations that we as black people need to have amongst ourselves. Because I think it's even we are problematic, and we need to sit with each other and have like a counseling just so we can be together. And then after that, we have the difficult conversations because we aren't coming on the same foot. So that's why the revolution can't be intersectional, because we don't know what that means.
So you talk a lot about Christianity and your faith, and in Growing Up Black and Christian on page 23, you talk about how the gospel is how whiteness breaks into our homes and brings us to our knees. And I think a lot of black people have a very complicated relationship with Christianity. Very, very complicated for a number of reasons. And I know water is your problem child. But in water, when you talk about how blasphemy is bringing slavery and wrapping it up in the gospel, that perfectly surmises so much of our difficulty with Christianity as a people, right? So I want to find out from you how you've navigated the idea of being black and Christian, because it comes through in a lot of your poetry. There's a lot of spiritual imagery in your poetry. So I want to know how you've navigated that, and in finding your own identity and what it means to have a Jesus like the one in the churches when we were growing up, who was blonde and blue-eyed, right? And didn't look like you, and certainly didn't, and didn't resemble anyone that you knew,
A lot of things came up when you were... So yesterday, I told you about the vow and the fact that my mother was there. My dad was and still is a pastor. Awkward. And someone during the Q&A yesterday asked me, so what is your relationship with God? And do you fear him? I was like, brother, listen here. I have to drive with my mother for an hour from the Vaal to Johannesburg. I will not answer your question. But it's an interesting thing, because I think I've spent about 100 pages challenging the gospel and challenging the church and challenging the word that I was raised on. And kind of in certain spaces, in the absence of my parents, right, in the absence of the people who gave me this gospel, who taught me the gospel, I am quite resolute in the project of denouncing the word, and quite sure. And I mean, even sometimes in their presence, I'm quite steadfast and kind of challenging, how the gospel came about for black people and why that project was necessary in disempowering black people. But it is still difficult because conditioning is a thing. When you spend, I'm 24 years old now, so I think for 21 years, I was kind of fed the same thing, right? And so I cannot expect of myself, I'm trying to be kind about the fact that in the past 3 years, I've been trying to undo something that has been done over 20 years, right? Which is, and it's kind of at an imbalance at the moment. And it's something that I find in moments that require of us to have faith, right? So for an example, sometimes I'm like, okay, cool, I've got this thing down. I've challenged the gospel. I've challenged the church. I'm on a path where I'm finding my own kind of spiritual journey. I am doing this thing. Until I get on a flight, because I'm scared of flying, and I get on an airplane and the turbulence happens. And I'm like, Karabasanda, Shabarobondo, Shibarororo. We are binding, everybody get up. You stop reading your magazine. Stop, everybody stop. What is happening? We are going to drop, we are going to die. And so, I think that I've got it down, right? I think that I've denounced the thing that I've been conditioned into until a moment where I have to grab onto something like faith, or I have to grab onto something that will hold me, right? And for 21 years, that has been God, that has been the gospel, that has been church. So now it's like for the past 4 years, I've been having to find something else that will do the same work of propelling me forward and grounding me, that is not necessarily rooted in something that does not look like me, something that seeks to oppress me, something that seeks to make me feel like I have to strive for something that's very far away, because that's what Christianity does. It goes, do not live here in the now, live for eternity, right? So in a way that kind of makes you, I don't want to say not present, but it kind of goes, you're not living for today. You are living for an eternity that may or may not happen, right? And I'm in an interesting space in the moment where I'm trying not to get into a space where I want to challenge the gospel, but I don't want to criticize it, because I also acknowledge that it has allowed black people to hold on to something and to live and to breathe, right? The fact that black people go, on Sunday, there is a something that's going to make me carry on until the next Saturday, right? So it's a difficult thing, right? Because our lives are complicated in that way, that something is not clearly that black and white. It's not that clearly, it is and it isn't, So the gospel has done something for black people that has helped them to hold on to something, in as much as it has, robbed them of something.
It's quite interesting that you say that, because Tani quotes he had a podcast done at the New York Public Library, and they were asking him about why he'd become an atheist, and so in the podcast he says he doesn't believe that there's going to be a great redemption for black people after this life. So the idea that this suffering is going to be meaningful and that we attach meaning to all of the suffering that black people have experienced in our lifetime is null and void for him, right? And that's why he believes that structures of inequality need to be dismantled, because there is no redemption for black people after this. And so in Afterlife, you speak about... And you say, hell will be the graves, 111. Hell will be the graves of our forefathers turned inside out to revenge the truth, right? What did you expect living in a haunted house and calling yourself free or pardoned? Tell them hallelujah sounds like black people burping justice. And so for me, the question that I think we've been grappling with is not only what does justice look like for black people for you, but what will redemption for black people look like for you?
I don't know. I have no idea. And I don't want to say land because we are people. And even when we get the things that we want, we are still not satisfied. So I think we have done a great job. And it's not even because of us. It's a systematic thing. That because we are a robbed people, we are a dispossessed people, that our eyes are kind of cast upon the things that have been stolen from us, right? That we think, okay, once I have this, I will be. Or once I get here, I will be, you know. That we a lot of the times we're not afforded the opportunity to kind of go, you know, okay, so I have all of this. I've got the land, I've got the Mercedes, I've got all of this, I've got this. What is the thing that makes me alive? What is the purpose here? So I'm kind of justice, man, and like what is it that will make, I don't know if it's materialistic, you know, because also we are water people, we are fire people, we are wind people, we are spirit people. And so even though a lot of the times we may attain the materialistic, there are certain things that are even beyond, that we can't even articulate in the here and now, that I know that once we attain them, we will feel like we are done and we have accomplished our purpose. And it's not land. It's not wealth. It's not the Mercedes. It's not your bae who's wearing a Lacoste. It's something else that is beyond, you know, the thing that we can grab or touch, you know. And I know that may sound like, you know, an airy fairy talk, but but I also know that a lot of us in this room understand that we are not only flesh, that we are spirit people, and that our purpose is beyond the land.
Sure. I mean, you spoke earlier about, you know, your dad being a pastor, and I think one of the most, I think I go back to this poem quite a lot, where the poem is on page 25. No, yes, 25. No Easter Sunday for queers. And I think this one is a deep one, you know, because on page 32 you say, I wonder, should I be murdered tomorrow? Would he, my father, preach about me with the same passion he preaches about the death of a white man he has never met, raised? Would he Google the other deaths? I want to ask him in the car after the service. I wonder if he can tell how my body language has changed when we arrive in Rondebosch. You should come to Belleville more often. By Belleville, he means church. Okay, I will. I don't mean it. What I really want to say or talk about or ask is, Daddy, if I were crucified and dumped in a tomb for 3 days and rose again as a headlight, would you preach about me? Would you tell the congregation that it was my sin that made them do it? Would you call my murderers Pharisees or cowards or servants of God? Would you call yourself Judas? How could you roll my stone away? How would you roll my stone away? Would you preach about me? And what would you say? My daughter was murdered yesterday, or a lesbian was murdered yesterday. Daddy, would you even preach at all? And I mean, that That was very deep for me because I think like sometimes we forget that we exist in these institutions. You know, when you speak about graduation, it's about going back home, and when you get back home, you have to pretend, you know, to be things that you aren't anymore because you've now lived in this safe space, and now you have to go back to your home where you have to be your parents' child. And how have you navigated, you know, that space? Because I think it's really, as a marginalized person, firstly for being black and being woman, and then add into it being queer, how do you navigate that space, particularly with the relationship that you have with your parents and their relationship with God?
Okay. I think that it has been a journey. Okay. The first thing is that a lot of the time when people think about Cape Town, they think of Cape Town as the queer capital, right? Where people kind of go and they can be free and they can be these, you know, gays and lesbians and LGBTQI what's and be free. But the thing that a lot of people don't know, and which is something that this poem kind of talks about, is that Cape Town has a lot of characters and personality and spaces. And the space that I kind of grew up in, which is the northern suburbs, which is something that I talk about in this poem, is a space where this idea of the queer capital is not even a thing. Right, it's on the other side of the southern suburbs, northern, obviously, and there was no space to kind of explore. And so, growing up, that kind of conversation was a non-conversation until I had to go to varsity, but my going to varsity was not just going to varsity, which is something that I know Kucho and Vuyelwa and Tumi will identify with. That I went to varsity, but I went to varsity and I went to drama school, which was, just crazy. It was a lot because there were a lot of characters. There were Jews, Hindus, Muslims, hippies, all of those funky business. And I had then kind of also during that time been introduced to so many other things. And because I had moved out of home or had moved away from home, I was starting to have conversations about my identity and about my self with people other than my parents. And so that was kind of starting to be informed by other things. And so whenever I'd kind of encounter my parents, the conversation became quite difficult. And now we are in a space where there's a whole book that I can't take back. I can't be like, Nkonko, sorry Puti, the book that you bought in the Val 2 weeks ago, can I have it back? I'm collecting all of the Collective Amnesia books. Like it's there, it's out there, right? Like, you know, I've got no choice but to now sit, and when my parents eventually do read the book, because they will, we're going to have certain conversations that I don't know how to answer for right now because that conversation has not happened. But I do know that I would not have been able to release this book 4 years ago. And that says something about, you know, having distance from your lived experience and from your conditioning.
So, as people know, we are also a literary podcast, so we read books and we review them. And I think something on your Instagram caught my eye. The first book that we reviewed and read, or not read, but I reviewed on our podcast was Under the Udala Trees. And I remember reading your book, and particularly, you know, Easter Sunday for queer people, and remembering a particular scene in Under the Udala Tree where, you know, the mother was using the word to take out this thing. And there was a moment where she says, and I think it speaks to your work as well, where the mom asks Ijeoma, the main character, she says, do you still think about her in that way? And I remember reading No Easter Sunday for Queer People and remembering that book, and then I saw you had read the book. So I wanted to know what your thoughts were when you were reading that book, because again, this whole idea of people telling our stories, of people who look and sound like us, was very important to me. So to read a queer woman's story in Africa, in Nigeria, was very important for me, because I'm like, finally, they're telling our stories. How did that book make you feel as a black queer woman in this country, and reading something that, although you haven't experienced yet because you haven't had the difficult conversation, do you think that it will look the way it did in Under the Udala Trees, or it will be a different conversation?
I honestly have no idea. I honestly have no idea. Just because my parents are really incredible people, they've allowed me to study something called theater, which I don't understand why you would allow your child to do something like that. But at the same time, are very steadfast on, Christianity. So they're flexible and free people, but I know that they believe in certain things. So I can't really answer for a conversation that has not happened. But as for Under the Udala Trees, I, resonated with, this Christianity pushing up against sexuality. And also I read it not long after, but just after the book had come out. And that's always nice to know that there's a conversation that's happening between us people, even though we are not physically in conversation like this. And knowing that you are not writing in a silo, in isolation, and that the conversation is happening everywhere.
Just can we take a moment for the magic that Koleka is? I think, I don't know if many of you know, but Collective Amnesia is prescribed reading for English students at Stellenbosch. The starter of apartheid is now teaching a black woman for the English, so we must recognize the magic. And recently also, second year UCT students, Koleka's work has been included as a black woman, a series on black women, and her book has been included. And I mean, it's like a month and a bit old. Like, when will your fave? When? But I think, I think we need to, in Growing Up Black and Women on page 24, Yes, you are coming.
What's happening? Never, ever.
So to Growing Up Black and Women, you say, ooh, guys, I had to take several moments for this. Growing Up Black and Women will teach you how to hoard skeletons, how to duct tape your screams with staples. Now, that's deep. You're just duct taping and then you're stapling. Babes, where does that line come from? Njani.
It comes from the thing that made the oppression to be done.
So yes, because I think it speaks about a double form of oppression, right? It speaks about the fact that you are black and you're a woman, so you've been silenced for your blackness, but also for your womanhood. So the imagery was very powerful for me.
Just in closing, so in the interview, on page 76, 76, right, in the interview, and you talk about, so I just want to quote something, black men and white women always write about black women as if we are already dead. Seems like the world does not know what a black woman walking really looks like when she is breathing. And there's a line from Black Girl Plotting, who are Vuyelwa's in the audience, hey? And they talk about how no one likes a black woman with a mouth. And Shonda Rhimes speaks about this quite often, about why she writes unlikable characters, right? Because there's an idea that as a black woman, you're always apologizing for your space. You're always creating space, And recently we've been talking about black excellence and black girl magic, and I was saying to Tlok the other day that I don't think that we will be free until black women can be mediocre in the ways that white men are mediocre and still make entire generational wealth and livings off it. So I want to know how you're navigating the space of being a pioneer in so many different ways, right? And being first black, because first black is a syndrome that I think we need to get over as a country. And no, we really need to get over first black. And how are you navigating the pressure of, there's an expectation that black people have to be excellent to get a seat at the table. Just to enter, we need to be excellent. And as amazing as melanin magic and black girl magic is, I think sometimes it's also a lot of pressure and it's a lot of anxiety and a lot of stress. How are you navigating that?
Okay. I think I try and be practical about things like this because they can feel like huge concepts. So I think that the first thing is that I try and recognize that there's space for all of us. And something that reminds me of this is that I could never be Vuyelwa, I could never be Kucho, I could never be Dumi, and that the work that I need to do and the work that Kakaza needs to do are two different things. And so just kind of that reminder already puts things into perspective. And allows me to do the work that I need to do and to sit in particular spaces without feeling like I need to prove something or that I need to be something other than what I am. And that's the most practical way that I can kind of think about it and talk about that navigating that space can feel like something really huge. But if I bring it down to that when I go, this is the thing that I need to do in this moment. There's only me, and that I don't. Also, because this concept of lanes can be very tiring. Stay in your lane. What the fuck? Like, what does that even mean? So just being practical about the fact that you have your purpose and I have my purpose, and when you begin to do the work of trying to understand that, it can help in terms of navigating and not being swept up by all the other stuff that can be quite consuming.
Thank you very much. So we're going to have the conversation at the floor. If you have any comments, questions, this is your opportunity. Can we just have the hands that I raised, and I will come to the hands that I raised. Please raise your hand if you have a question, if you have a comment. If you want to converse. Okay. Hands up. Books up, maybe. Okay. Please say your name and then what you would like to say.
Okay, so my name is Rakadi. And I just want to honor you and say thank you. When we started with the first, was it Black Joy? I was just thinking, part of oppression is putting us in a box to explain ourselves. Part of what the gazer does is to preoccupy us with explaining ourselves. But what the space is doing, it's actually forcing a narrative of saying we are experimenting with what we understand as justice. And I think that's the biggest challenge for the oppressor. We should not always look at ourselves against the oppressor, but the time will come when that does not happen. But I'm very proud that we are saying power exists even when you think it doesn't exist. And we are not going to explain ourselves, but we are going to experiment. When people say to you, so what do you think must happen? What do you think we should do for you for oppression to go away? They're trying to preoccupy you. They don't want you to experiment with what belongs to you, which is love, which is light, which is everything that's good about who we are. So I think this space is very important. And I just want to say that, your notion of saying black is not monolithic reminded me that when I was a child, we used to call that sugary water skambeleng. I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's supedi. So we used to call it, whenever somebody had a shock, we'd give them skambeleng. So it just shows you that we're not one thing. We're just multiple, complex, and we love and we laugh and we do things. Thanks.
Shine.
Molweni, igama lam ndinguKwezi Lomso. The first thing I also want to say, Koleka, is enkosi. I could try and make all the nice fancy language I can master, but in many of our belief systems, which are complicated, right? But in many of our African traditions, we understand that, our physical manifestations are other people speaking through us. And they are feminist gods who have chosen your body and your voice for this offering. And we don't necessarily need to understand those things. But there's something about a creation, and then you read it to faces that look like yours, and we go away, and you are taken right back into a moment that we don't get when white people are writing. It's all like theoretical and whatever, and these metaphors that have really nothing to do with who else is writing about plastic as a shop, right? Like, there's that moment. I'm sorry about your problem child, but she's also clearly your favorite child, who gets all the heat. So enkosi, this is really, it's something very big. And I hope you know that. And I hope the weight of it just kind of carries you and doesn't overwhelm you. I also really wanted to reflect on this idea of our complex and complicated relationship with spirituality and church mostly, which has been an obsession of mine as well for the many years I have been alive. And I come from a very interesting family. So I come from like a very Pan-Africanist home, right? Like there were guns in my home. But very Christian too, right? So you have Marx sitting in the same place saying religion is the opiate of the masses. And then you have our people going to church every Sunday and holding senior positions in the church. And then sikhele on a weekend, right? That's my home. And somehow it makes sense. And there's also something about how, as black people, we need to take back the things that we create and they bastardize and not give them all of it. And we need to honor when we take their things and use them to resist. Because there are strands in Christianity that have helped us to resist, right? This is where things like liberation theology comes from and this and that. And we're living in these complex lives where you can't kind of shed it off. So you're like, what do I do with it, Ke? How do I read it in a way where I queer it and I make it black and I feminist it for my project? And I want to honor that about us as a people, that we don't just receive these things, yeah. Oppression happens. And you'll find black joy even as women abangomakoti are forced to cook at 4 a.m. and they're laughing hysterically. It's not a nice place, but they'll make it joyful. So there's something there for me.
Anyone else? It's a safe space.
Yeah, I have a question, 2 questions. The first question I think I've asked you, Koleka, why is the book $100? Okay, anyways, we'll deal with that later. I feel like siyas ropa sometimes, you know, we're like, okay, it must. Sorry? Good. Yeah, good, because you see, that's the difference. You didn't know? Yeah, I feel like siyas ropa Tina, you know? It's like, yeah, it's just a collective amnesia. No. You're doing quite a lot, and I think that we need to be paying for. You deserve the money. It shouldn't be $100, but conversation for another day. My question is there a reason why none of the poems are in isiZulu, isiXhosa, isiSotho? Sesotho. isiXhosa, isiZulu. Ke Mosotho. Okay, so language ya gago has. Is there a reason why they're all in English? And just teasers here and there. Is there a reason? And what is the reason?
Hey, to me. 400 Rand exclusives. Which exclusive is this? Which one? Because it's not 400.
So if you go, we were interviewed by Exclusive recently, and if you, one of the books, they asked us what's the most exciting thing in literature right now, we're like Collective Amnesia. If you click on it, it's 412 Rand.
Which exclusive is this? Wow, it's a lot. Okay.
So sorry, I don't want to monopolize the floor, but let me just speak. So what happens is that when you're looking for a black book, you know which ones I mean. Exclusive will not have them. When they have them, they make it $400, right? That is totally unacceptable. I think it's a campaign that we have to take up. Because I've asked them a lot of times that I need black books on your shelf. Get them, and they don't get them. But when they get them, they make them $400. That's ridiculous.
Okay.
Imagine.
Because I know that at the exclusives at the store in Cape Town, that it's not. But yes, that it's good that I know that. Yes. Yes, okay, but I know. Yes. Honorable members. Order. Yeah. The book selling business is a fuck up for black people. But yeah, it's something. Wow, this online thing is a thing for me right now. 100 Rand for a lot of people is nothing, but for a lot of other people, it's a lot. And it is also why the book is not in color, because it's cheaper to print in black and white. So to make the printing process cheaper so that the book can be affordable for a lot of other people. And so I get, yes, the eating needs to happen, the bills need to happen, but there are certain people, and I don't want to speak for other people out there whose faces I don't know. There are people in my life, in my family, who are my friends, who I know I would like for them to be able to go, here's the 100 Rand. Can I get your book in return? And that was important for me. And so I know that it's a conversation that a lot of people won't understand, just in terms of like making money and that sort of thing. But you and I will have this conversation in depth some other time, because I know that it's a thing. But yeah, it's about certain people in certain spaces being able to afford the book. Your second question, babes, was about? I'm not fluent in isiXhosa. And it's not my fault, and I'm done apologizing for it. Just because my parents thought that it would be a great idea to move me forward in life, to take me to those other schools. But I am kind of trying to do the work now of catching up, of learning and trying to make this mother tongue feel like it's something that I can wear and not a costume that I have to perform for myself and for my family and for other people. So those are languages that I'm not fluent in. In metaphor, what even is that in isiXhosa? Colonial what, I don't even know what that is in isiXhosa. There are certain things that I don't have a name or language for in isiXhosa that I'm in a space now where I'm playing catch up. So I guess that's why the book is in English.
Thank you very much. I think the conversation has become very fruitful. Just to let you know, we're about to close this session, but Koleka will do a signing, and then you can get your copy of her book signed by her. I think for me, storytelling is a footnote again. It says, how my people remember, how my people archive, how we inherit the world. And this reminds me of a quote by Toni Morrison where she says, Black literature is taught as sociology, as tolerance, not as serious, rigorous art form. And for me, Koleka, your book is this serious, rigorous art form. I think it's important for the healing that we need to do as a nation. And I want to, I think when I read these words, I thought of you and what revolution looks like. Angela Davis says, revolution is a serious thing. The most serious thing about a revolutionary's life is when you commit to struggle, it must be for a lifetime. And this is your work, the legacy that you will leave this lifetime of revolution.
Can I say something before we go? But you
can. And with that being said, so in your poem Lifeline, on page 83, you list a whole bunch of phenomenal...
Some who are here, by the way.
Some who are here today.
Can we just, like Kwezi Lomso's here, Poncho's here, Vuyelwa's here, Kucho's here, Domi's here. All of the women are here who are in that lifeline. Let the church say amen.
And when I was reading Lifeline, what was beautiful for me was how Black women have always stood together and supported each other and been a fellowship and a communion, right? Even in spaces and in times which didn't allow us to be that. And for me, your book is a testament to that. And so when you write and you pay homage to all these phenomenal Black women, right? I think of how Maya Angelou said, I may come as one, but I stand as 10,000, right? And what that means for us right now. And so there's a quote that says that you are your ancestors' wildest dreams. And I think that is such a perfect description of what it means to be you now. Here you are, Black and woman and alive, and weaving magic from a language which has always been used to oppress and subjugate us, right? And here you are, she's on a reprint of a book that is a month old, and she's doing the things that need to be done. And I have no doubts that there are going to be little Black girls who read this book and in ages to come will be listing you in the same way that you're listing a Toni Morrison and in the same way that you're listing a Kimberly Crenshaw. So we want to thank you for doing the phenomenal work that requires doing, for being a pioneer in a time which is so difficult to pioneer. We're so grateful for that. And we want to say a very, very special thank you to Word and Sound, who also get a special mention in the book, read the book, for always supporting literature, for always supporting young poets, for always creating spaces for young Black people to flourish and to prosper. And this is what it looks like to create a legacy. So thank you to you guys. Thank you to everybody who's come out in support tonight. We are so grateful to you guys. This would not be what it is without each of you.
I'm trying not to respond to this because I have a fire in me burning, And I've got many emails that I want to send. And so I'm in a space where I try and sit with things and deal with them, not from a space of fire. So I'm just sitting with that. But thank you for the tweet. Was it a tweet? We are in the era of fetching and dragging. But the thing that I wanted to say is that a lot of the time spaces like this can feel like, for me, what are we making? What are we making? Is it burgers? Is it pizza? What are we making? Is it for us? Spaces like this can feel like, particularly for me, where you look at people and people come with expectations and with agendas, right? And so conversations can feel like I feel like I'm regurgitating certain ideas and certain feelings. But I want to say thank you for the energy that was in the room tonight, where I felt like I could bring my mother into the space. I could bring all of my selves and my histories into the space. And I could bring the journey of the book into the space. And I don't know what it is, and I can't explain it, but I think it's the collective of the people who are in the space. And I don't know if you can thank people for something like that, but thank you.